There are neuronormative biases and social standards that a lot of neurodivergents don't subscribe to. If you can't really deal with the type of weirdness and diversity that neurodivergents bring to the world, then you're probably not a good match for those people.
On our first date, my ex-husband wore a bow tie, a tuxedo shirt, and he wore a Miami Vice jacket. I was embarrassed for how he was dressed. He had his own unique way of dressing.
The privilege that I feel from my wife, who loves me, for who I am. She loves me.
Welcome back to the Neurodivergent Connections YouTube channel. And I'm Mona Kay, and I'm a social worker, and I'm a late identified ADHDer, and I was in a neurodiverse relationship for 30 years of marriage, and we were together for 32, and we didn't find out we were a neurodiverse couple until our 29th year of marriage. So I've been divorced since 2018, and I'm on a path, I think, forever to learn about neurodiverse relationships and also to share what I learn with the world. So I am so glad that we are back. So Scott, I'm going to go to you to introduce yourself, and then Craig.
Howdy, howdy. I'm Scott Simpson, local dad and ADHD guy, autism and ADHD. Found the ADHD first, found the autism second, and to me that explained everything. That it's like ADHD, autism. It explains so much. And life has been interesting without. I lost my wife to ovarian cancer, and we had a difficult marriage. Neither of us knew anything about autism, despite the fact that she was also a social worker. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm happy to help more people navigate grown-up relationships.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I didn't even know that she was a social worker, but yeah, sometimes it's really hard to see what's closest to us, I mean, it's easy to have some blind spots, we did with our kids too. But yeah, I'm Greg Fuqua. Excited to be here. I am a late identified autistic guy and also a mental health counselor that specializes in working with neurodivergent individuals and couples. And I'm also in a 30-some odd year relationship with a neurodiverse relationship. My wife is late identified ADHD. Seems to be running themes here. But yeah, so happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. We all kind of have a similar color pattern to our clothes today. I don't think that's ever happened before.
We didn't even consult.
Different shapes and sizes, but similar color pattern. It's interesting. Maybe we're getting more in alignment, guys. So we've done a number of episodes that I think have been really impactful to folks, and I love our conversations. And today we have another question from a listener to the Neurodiverse Love podcast. And I think this is a really important issue that I have never addressed on my podcast, but it certainly was something that came up in my marriage and in other relationships with autistic and ADHD men. So this is the question and the topic. If a neurotypical partner is prone to frequent or easy embarrassment on behalf of their neurodivergent partner, what are some coping strategies that can be used in public settings or with new acquaintances that may not be accustomed to your partner's quote unquote quirks? More importantly, when your partner is being misinterpreted as rude or being insensitive or any of the other misapplied labels that may frequently be given, how can the neurotypical partner best help smooth things over without necessarily disclosing the diagnosis? And Scott, I know you have some thoughts on this to start us out with.
I mean, I spent most of my life complying with the request to act normal. because I did embarrassing things, but they weren't embarrassing to me. They were just fun. I did things that just came naturally to me, and that's like my default thing. And I just assumed that it was something I picked up from my dad, that just interacting with people in a way that amused himself and made other people roll their eyes and whatever. But once I took that on as myself, I wasn't embarrassed by it. I thought it was fun. But I do remember going out to a nice restaurant with my wife. It might have even been in Paris. Let's say it was. And I'm engaging with the, oh, and now what does that come with? That sounds delicious. Thank you. So, and I'm like, to me, I'm being perhaps not comically polite, but more performatively polite than the people around. And that was taken down with a, can't you just be normal?
Right.
And at the time, I didn't know that I couldn't. I thought I could. So
Right.
for the rest of, for the next maybe 12 years, I didn't goof around with the wait staff very much.
Oh.
I do now. I have had some great conversations with people when I'm big and on or whatever. I connect with people and we both have a great time. But so it's embarrassing to somebody else. So I don't know where you guys, because you have I'm just a layman. I'm a civilian out here. You guys have the professional chops of how to handle this tactfully. My current partner does not handle it tactfully. When she
Okay.
talks to a friend or family member who says, you know, Scott, that he was kind of rude when he said, why don't you blah, blah, blah. Or when he asked me, one that comes to mind, I hope she doesn't hear this, when I said, well, when somebody was complaining, I got to clean up all this dog crap. And I'm thinking immediately, well, who's supposed to be cleaning up the dog crap? Like, what? How did it get to this stage? So I say, who's supposed to be doing that?
Right.
Apparently, that's insensitive and rude.
Oh, you said that out loud. You didn't just think
I
it.
said it. No, I said it to the person. Yeah, I was like, to me, I'm like, no, you shouldn't be having to do that. Who should have been doing that? Who hasn't done their job? How can I team up with you to
Right.
alleviate this burden? But instead, it's taken as a bad thing. So word gets back. My partner's current plan, and I went over this just before we started recording today. I said, how do you handle it? And it's like a 3-step process. 1, how you. 2, it's none of your business. And 3, shut up. I might have got the order of them mixed up, but she, from her point of view, I don't need defending. I just am what I am. If you don't like it, tough. I've never had that before, so it blows my mind. I'm sure there's a more tactful way that you guys know how to do it. But yeah, we get told all the time, quit doing that, stop doing it, don't rock, don't wiggle, don't look so miserable to be here, don't look like you want to be anywhere but here, right? And I'm like, there's a lot of rules to remember.
Yeah. Even if you had the instruction manual, you'd have to be turning to it
Oh
every
my God.
second of your
It's like
life.
the Bible. There's things that contradict all the way through.
I know. So before I share it, Greg, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I
Thank
think this is tricky because, does the partner want feedback? Number one, I mean, there's ways to create some protocols that help create more reflectivity in your relationship. And I can speak to some of that stuff. But this to me starts to overlap into one of those areas that I call ownership versus enmeshment, right?
you.
And enmeshment, again, is I am you. The way I think, feel, and behave determines how you should feel, think, and behave, right?
Yeah.
And if we don't have space, individuality, freedom to be ourselves, right, then we're going to be constant at each other's throat, determining the other person's how they need to be, right? So, number one, know if your neurodivergent partner is, as Scott's described, just being themselves, and yeah, it isn't quote unquote maybe as normal as you may want it to be. Then I think you have to decide, if this is my issue or if it's actually theirs,
Right.
right? And then there's a time where it can overlap into
Sure.
theirs. I think you've got to laugh at them. You've got to love them for who they are. You know,
Wait.
you've
Who's
got
laughing at who in this? Who's laughing at who?
to.
Do I laugh at the
Well,
person for being embarrassed?
yes,
It
yeah.
goes both
I think
ways, right?
I do. I think there needs to be a lightheartedness and just also a sense of freedom to be ourselves. So I have a client who has this issue, and their partner has this problem of always leaving their fly down. so, so obviously this can be really embarrassing. And
A message, Greg, that he's trying to put out to the world. I'm
yes,
available. See,
right,
you got to make
uh,
fun.
right. Open door policy here. And so and it's a repeat thing, and she has brought it up with him, he doesn't care. He does not care. And he can be called out, right, standing up in front of a bunch of people we just met. And she's like, get, check your fly. And he's like, ah. And even people have told him, publicly too. And he's like, oh yeah, it does not bother him.
Right,
So whose issue is this?
right.
Right? Whose issue is it really, Um, and then I think the other thing that I want to say is, right, do they want that feedback? Right. And I think one of my big principles, communication principles, is to prepare and to debrief. Okay. And what does that mean? That means with your partner, you should talk about what are the pitfalls, what might be the problems, what's our escape route for the situation, how are we feeling, how are we going to navigate this thing together, so you can get on the same page and help support one another. But then there's the debrief. And this is a
Mhm.
perfect time for the debrief, which is to ask your partner, hey, how did that go for you? How did it feel? And they're like, well, I could tell people were not responding well to me, and that might be a thing. But if they do notice that, the door's open for you to say something, particularly if you've noticed that too. And then you can ask them, hey, do you want my perspective on kind of maybe what was going on? And, maybe the neurodivergent person is like, yeah, because I don't have a clue, and I started to feel self-conscious, but, they were just being themselves. But practicing that communication protocol helps create the opportunity to maybe do that too. And just to add to that, you never need to disclose the diagnosis.
Mhm.
Never, ever, ever. This is a human being. That's
Yep,
it.
I agree. I agree. And some people feel really comfortable, sharing their neurodivergence, and that can be a conversation that you have with your partner. Is it okay to share with our new friends? Is it okay to share with our family? Is it okay to share with the couples we're getting together for the party tonight, ahead of time, that we've discovered that you're neurodivergent, specifically ADHD, autistic ADHD, and if there are some things that they don't understand, they can have an opportunity to ask, pull one of us aside, but not to do it maybe publicly in front of everybody, like call you out, that would be disrespectful. So I agree with you, Greg. And, early in I don't know if we were married or just dating, I'm not sure. There were a few things that were really quirky in my relationship that I didn't understand. And I got embarrassed. And so I could really relate to this. One of them was my ex-husband definitely had echolalia. And for those that don't know what that is, it's when somebody will repeat or use, I guess, words that might be different to almost like kind of mimic somebody. And so one of the things that used to happen is we'd be out together and somebody would come up to us who was from another country or their native language was different and so they had a thick accent. And my ex-husband used to change his accent. And he was pretty damn good at it, right? I mean, if you didn't see physically what he looked like, you would think he was a native person, right? He was a good actor. And so at first, I was like laughing after the person left. I would laugh because I thought he was joking. But
Ah,
no, it was part of like his communication. Maybe he had always done it. And it started really embarrassing me. And one day I had to say to him, not in front of anybody. But if you keep doing that, somebody's going to know you're not whatever it is you're pretending to be. And they're going to think you're offending them or you're being offensive. And somebody might just hit you or do something that you don't want them to do because I know your intention is not bad. So I think after that he stopped, but he was not embarrassed at all. I don't even know if he was aware that he was doing it on a regular basis. So I think there's an opportunity to have a conversation with your partner, right? The other thing, and I've talked about this on the podcast, on our first date, my ex-husband wore a bow tie, a a tuxedo shirt. And in those days, it was Miami Vice days, and we lived in South Florida. And he wore a Miami Vice jacket. It was like, I want to say purple and white stripes, like this big. And I looked at him when he first came in, and I was like embarrassed. I was embarrassed for how he was dressed. This was 1985. Okay. So bow ties were not popular back then, and definitely not tuxedo shirts and a bow tie. But he had his own unique way of dressing, and it was really quirky, and a little embarrassing in the beginning. And I had to either accept the fact that this is who he is and this is how he dresses. And he had many bow ties, guys. I later learned the first time I had a chance to see what was in his drawers. And what I realized, it was just a part of who he was, and he felt really comfortable. And it was my insecurity. It was my embarrassment that I had to deal with. And I did. And, we have many pictures of him in his bow tie tuxedo shirt. And yeah, he looks different than everybody else, but it's okay. So I would say to the listener to get curious about why you're so embarrassed, right? Because like you said, Scott, if your partner is really comfortable just being themselves, this may not be their issue. This is your issue to deal with. And I often say, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So is there something from your past that might be bringing this up and triggering you because maybe you were embarrassed as a child or a teenager about something you did or a parent did? And how can you heal that? Because if your partner's comfortable with their quirks and they don't care, like the guy with the fly down, how do you stop from getting triggered and be more healthy in the relationship? That's the question I would ask. Yeah, Scott.
Can I ask for a twist on that then?
Yeah, of course.
I
Always.
love that approach. And if any neurotypical partner people are watching, I agree with what Mona said. Look at yourself and see why you're embarrassed about that. And I'm glad she said it, because the way I'd say it would probably make you defensive. I'd say, this is your
Wait.
problem.
How? Okay.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
and I know not to now, but I'm
Okay.
sure in past I was like, this is entirely your problem. I'm happy to give any facts you want to help you figure that out and work through
Yeah.
it with you. But this isn't me needing to change. This is you being upset with how I am.
Yeah.
However, I'm embarrassed by things I used to do, and
Okay.
I probably in 10 years will be embarrassed by things I do now, because I learn and grow and I learn and grow.
Good.
And what I was not embarrassed about before and quite confident doing, there were things I should not have been doing. I agree. There are clothes that I should not have worn to work. And the answer to, are you wearing that? Really? Should have been, no, dear, I'll change. Because, they can see things I can't. And
Right.
sometimes what is embarrassing is something that would be to my benefit to fix.
Right.
But as you point out, like, it shouldn't be a pressure fix, because if you got any of these PDA tendencies, the more you say, Scott, you really should wear more button-up shirts, the more I'll say, no, I have T-shirts that fit just fine, thank you, and the stains build character. It's hysterical. It's historical. Stains. Every grease spot tells a story. And the more we can laugh about this together, I misunderstood your hysterical thing. I think what you meant to say was, if you're having a hysterical large reaction to it, there's probably some history behind why. I
Exactly.
looked at it was like, if I'm doing something hysterically funny, this can be a
Oh,
historic moment that we can make memories of and come back to later instead of going, that's the time that you cut off another piece of my personality.
oh my gosh, isn't that funny? Okay, so here's where I think the different neurotypes in a romantic relationship or a family relationship are so challenging sometimes because I have never heard anybody take that statement and turn it around the way you did, but it could be both ways. And we talk about this so often. Both perspectives can be wrong and both perspectives can be right, right? So we're both right,
Yep.
right? And we just saw it through a different lens. I love that, Scott. I love that. I do.
So if there is something you're embarrassed about and I really need to know about it, I don't know how you figure out whether to tell me or not. Because if it's just that it bothers you and there's no real reason behind it that needs to be fed to me, then that's one thing. But if it's like, no, 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 bow ties to this restaurant are not okay. They specifically have a no bow tie policy, and here's why: because of the
McDonald's,
bow tie
right?
gangs that used to come in the '70s and disrupt everything, or something. If you can explain the why behind it, not just like, not wearing
But
that, are you?
even if I were to explain the why, it still is up to my partner to decide if they
Yeah.
want to change. And that's what emotionally mature love is all about at 61, for me, because I can express my thoughts just like this listener can express their thoughts about, how uncomfortable they are with something their partner is saying, doing, or whatever. But it's up to their partner to decide if it matters enough to them to want to change it. And
I
maybe,
processed this once before already with regard to raising my son. Once
okay,
I understood myself and the autism and stuff, I would get on his case for wearing his shoes untied. This was just
okay.
like the fly down story. I'd say to him, like, dude, your shoes are untied. You probably want to tie those up. And he looks at me and goes, no, it's my style. See, you're looking at it like the fly down is a functional thing. Something could fall out. You could be picked up on charges and sent away for years. It's happened. It really has happened.
I'm sure it has.
Autistic, that we could do a whole show on that.
Yeah,
Not that specifically, but stuff that gets autistic people in trouble than that they
yes,
didn't, like legal trouble that they didn't even know.
right. They
Anyway,
didn't know. Yeah,
but when it comes to shoelaces, I think it's safety. But like, he hasn't fallen down yet, and if he wants to walk around with floppy shoes, that's his problem.
there you go. There you go. Thoughts, Greg? I feel like there's something
Yeah.
brewing. Yeah.
Yeah, just to go back to the historical thing. I read it literally too at first. Now I caught up to it, all right. But right, the
It's
autistic
so interesting.
default is just like literal. I'm like waiting for it to piece together for me. I'm like, anyhow, and you did. Yeah, so and I've had the same issue with clothing and dressing. And I basically dressed like a little kid, really up until I finished my art degree in graduate school. And I remember being in a critique, and someone just decided to attack me basically and said,
Mm.
you dress like a little kid, Greg. What the hell are you doing? You've got a t-shirt, you've got sports shorts on, and tennis shoes. It's the only thing you wear. And I don't know where this came from. Probably they were
Wow.
just tired of me at some level, because we were right in the middle of an art critique, so it was kind of strange, But again, just rubbed them wrong, and then they started pointing some, and I was absolutely shocked. Like
Mm.
and I have no clue really about fashion, about what works, what doesn't, and my wife, she didn't say anything to me. Now, when we got to a clothing store, man, she was ready to go for me though. She was ready to help, right? And again, there was that demand avoidance or thinking about, to me, it was like kind of all about comfort for the most part, and I just didn't have a clue of what was the social expectation. Um, and so at that point, I started figuring it out. And so in some ways, I'm kind of grateful for that, but I was also really hurt, and I was really embarrassed about it too. And so I think there is a better way of bringing it up too, and it goes back to this idea of ownership. If you're embarrassed but they're fine, then you have to come from a vulnerable ownership stance when you
Mhm.
talk about it. So, number one, start with the positive assumptions and empathy. Hey, I love you. I love you who you are. And I love your uniqueness, your differences too. At times, though, I get easily embarrassed by little things,
Mm.
that you do. And so that would be kind of a way of kind of trying to move into it to create some awareness to have your partner want to honor, what's hard for you.
Mhm.
But if you're saying you're doing this and this is wrong, and what is wrong with you, okay, that's not a good way of trying to bridge this moment with somebody. So I think that's important to sort of to think about is again that ownership piece a little bit. Now, I've asked my wife because I know she can get embarrassed by me. Um, and so I would often say, "Hey, are you afraid that I will embarrass you if I do X, Y, and Z?" So, for instance, there was a period of time where I was unemployed and I didn't know how to handle that because I was so over identified with my work representing my worth. And
Mm.
so I would come up with really crazy ideas when people would ask me what I do for a living. And one of them was I'm a demonologist. So I work on possession and, and I'm like, am I, oh, and so I checked in with my wife about this. Would you be okay? Right. And she's just like, go right ahead, go right ahead. And so
That's
she,
hysterical.
I cannot embarrass her because it's all me. And she doesn't attach to me that way. She will point out and probably make fun of me, but she's not me, right? And I am not her. And so the stuff that I do is all mine, you know, and she still loves me for that. Part of what she says about why she loves me is that she doesn't know what she's going to get. She doesn't know what's going to come out of my mouth. She doesn't know what the next layer down is, you know,
Right.
and I will change and move and surprise, and she loves that. And so that's the other part of this is do you really love them for who they are?
Yeah.
And of course, I don't want to break up your love or your marriage or your partnership with somebody, but I think that's a good way to rework it too. Where a lot of these traits, a lot of these behaviors are really connected and inextricable about who they are. And yeah, that's part of their neurology too, their neurotype.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I think I've talked about this before on the YouTube channel, but I've definitely talked about it on my podcast. And that is that the Gottmans, John and Julie Gottman, have done research for about 50 years with couples. A lot of their couples are neurodivergent, even though they don't mention that because I don't know that they know all that much about neurodiversity. But one of the things that they have said has come out of their research is that 69% of a couple's problems are perpetual. 69%. That's based on 50 years of research. So only 31% of our problems are solvable, is what they say. And I do wonder if in neurodiverse relationships the percentage is even lower because the perpetual problems are problems due to, I'm going to say, your neurotype, your personality, your values, your character, your childhood, your family of origin, your childhood stuff that maybe will never get resolved. Things that aren't going to change, you keep harping on them, and I'm raising both hands because I was guilty of it. All you're going to do is create suffering for yourself and probably for your partner. But if you focus on the 31% that are solvable, like when we're out in public and I notice you did not, bring your fly up when you went to the bathroom, I'm going to give you this code word. And then you can choose to ignore the code word, or you can choose to look down and, zip up your fly. And you can make it a funny code word, like, did you get sugar in your coffee, or a sentence or something like that? Or, oh my gosh, did you see that, red Volkswagen outside? And now you know that your zipper's down. And it's kind of clearing the air in a funny way. And then you get to make the decision. But I think there's one other part to this that is really important, and that is when you're meeting new people and your partner is just who they are and you're okay with it, but other people respond in a negative way, or you never get invited back to those couples nights or the gatherings at the book club or wherever, because your partner was rude, or they were very black and white with what they were saying and were not flexible, or they went into the echolalia or whatever, or they came, and stood there with their fly down and never, zipped it up, whatever the
Or
issue
they
is.
spent 25 minutes lecturing everyone in the room about the evils of Scientology.
Or demonology, whatever.
Demonology. Brothers
Yeah,
inology.
I know. And it's okay to you, but it may not be okay to others. What do you do if you keep losing friends or don't get invited back? Because that's an issue for a lot of couples. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I don't know, because
yeah.
I'm going to trust what Greg says, because I've never had friends like that.
Wait, you never had friends who didn't invite you back, or friends who
Well,
didn't?
yeah, we didn't get a lot of first invites, so when we had, fifth and sixth invites, we kind of stuck to those people.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is, there are neuronormative biases and social standards that a lot of neurodivergents don't subscribe to. If you can't really deal with the type of weirdness and diversity that neurodivergents, bring to the world, then you're probably not a good match for those people. That's my take. I mean, I feel like I can really deal with almost anybody. And of course, I'm a counselor, so I kind of do. But I've always been that way, and probably in the same way that your ex, Mona, could, camouflage or mask or match somebody, and I tend not to be judgmental unless it tends to be pretty violent or judgmental back.
Hmm.
So when people are weird or abrasive, and of course, I'm not always looking for neurodivergence, but I accept a lot of diversity in people. And, obviously I don't tolerate abusive behavior, or violent behavior or violent language, but yeah, there's some people that are just them, and yeah, I do have to decide if that's okay for me, if that's not right for me. And yeah, it's going to be hard. And I have plenty of clients that struggle with this stuff, and I did too. I mean, I got fired from jobs I had no clue why.
Mm.
And I know it was social or political. I
Mm.
know it was something that I said. What was bad about it? I don't know. I don't know if I would do it any different or not. I don't know if I could. Um, so, I think it, it is a tricky situation, but I think people also need to be open and embrace the weird and the diverse a little bit, and try to stay more open about it. I think, trying to fit into a very narrow frame of normal is just not going to work very well for a lot of neurodivergent people.
And it's exhausting. It's really draining.
Yeah.
Before I really understood my neurotype, I realized that I could be too much for for certain people, right? I'm always trying to be very positive, and for the most part, I'm a very optimistic and positive person. I think that's why I was able to do the Neurodiverse Love podcast. I've actually had people say, "What, you divorced your husband and you still loved him and you both still loved each other, and now you're talking about all the lessons that you learned. Why are you doing this? Because I'm a very optimistic person and I think things can get better. So I think one of the ways in which things can get better around this topic is if we look at the strengths that each person brings to our life. And if there's not enough strengths, then I think it could be hard to accept some of the quirks or challenges, right?
Oh, okay. That's a neat way of looking at it.
Because think about it. If being with certain people, you walk away feeling like they're energetic vampires or so overwhelming that you're exhausted all the time, I have to question for myself, why am I spending time with these folks, right? So either I'm having to be somebody that I'm not, or they're repeatedly judging me or making me feel less than because I'm so different from them. Why do I want to spend time with them? But I'm
If there's that
65,
much friction, like
right?
what's going
Why would
on?
Right. Why would I want to? What am I trying? And I think this is an issue too. What am I trying to prove by being friends with these people who aren't accepting of me with all my energy and optimism? I mean, it's overwhelming for a lot of people. They don't want to hear that I'm in a good place. They don't want to hear that I'm happy or that I'm growing and learning. Some people really are disgusted by that, but I'm not going to change, right? So the guy with the fly might never change, fly down. I don't think my ex-husband still wears bow ties, but maybe he does. I don't
You
know.
know what? I don't think he watches, but wherever he is, despite all whatever the stories have been, I hope he has the bow tie he always wanted. I hope he gets to wear it somewhere where people think it's awesome.
Yeah,
I hope that he feels awesome wearing it around those people and that
I
he
agree.
gets like a moment of just pure joy and peace that
I
his
agree.
thing went over.
I
Because
agree.
whatever kind of person he was in the past, we're all people, and I like seeing people get happies.
I agree with you. I think the fact of the matter is, as we get older, hopefully we have the opportunity to be more comfortable in our own skin. But it does take looking at the hysterical, and I mean hysterical when you get overly emotional, not, the happy hysterical, and seeing where it's historical, because that trauma that is historical that you haven't learned from and grown from and healed will stay forever stuck in you. I really do believe that. And, I think we've talked about somatics and somatic therapy and really being able to heal what you've been hurt by or what has hurt you. It is so life altering to do that. So, any other thoughts, you guys?
Well, once you've handled that and you've handled it yourself in relation to your partner, and you're not embarrassed by them anymore, you're on board. The two of you are one hysterical duo. But your friends, these third party people, maybe not so much. You take your fella to the Christmas party. He's polite and everything, but he's clearly a little odd. And people at work are like, "What was with your husband? He seemed nice, but what the hell?" How I don't know. Like it's an awkward place to be in, having to speak for someone else, but in a sense, you're sort of speaking for yourself because, like, what are you
Yeah.
doing with a guy like that?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
for
how do
me,
you handle that? I've never been a woman who's had to explain myself
for
that way.
me, for me, I have said we all have our unique ways of being. We all have our differences, and I love those things about him. That's what I would say. Now, like what Greg said, if it's hurtful, like if my partner is going out getting drunk, like because he's socially anxious and
Uh,
screaming at people at the Christmas party, I'm not okay with that. And I don't know that I would take him back to a Christmas party.
yeah.
We didn't have a discussion about it and have like a code word or a process that we would go through. Okay, the first hour you're there, the second hour, you're going for a walk or you're leaving, and I'm telling folks you had another event to go to, because no, I will not put up with nastiness or abusive language. And I had a partner who did that. He would get drunk, he was socially anxious, autistic, he would get drunk, and then he could say some really nasty things. So, you have to have boundaries. But if it's
Yep.
just quirkiness and different ways of
Yep.
communicating, it's a
Yeah.
different story. You think so too, Greg?
No, I think it's a really good way to say it, and I have a lot of clients that I end up helping identify, right, as on the spectrum. And I'm a very relational therapist, so I'm always interested in their relationships. And I'm a dynamic thinker, so it's really helpful. And so I'm always welcoming partners in, always wanting to know the status of people's relationships. And what I get a lot from the partner is, okay, now that you've identified that you think you're autistic, now you're acting different as if you're more autistic, you know?
Yes.
And that question comes back to me as the therapist. And I'm like, that person should be honored that you can finally unmask in front of them and fully be your authentic self. You should be honored to have that level, that your partner has that level of comfort with you.
Mhm.
And this also speaks to probably another problem around this, which is a lot of autistics um, will will perform in a relationship for a long time until it's secure. And then they start to unmask more. And
Mhm.
so it may be that the first version of your partner that you got was pretty palatable. And then as they've unmasked more and more, it becomes a little bit more cringy or something. And that's a legitimate problem too, right? Is, you sort of have a little bit of buyer's remorse, or you're just learning
Mhm.
more and more about them. I think that happens in relationships in general.
Right.
People try to put their best foot forward, but yeah, I think we have to really be honored about people that can be themselves, and I think we want to encourage people to be themselves. And I always say accuracy is more important than preserving the relationship, which means that you need to know who likes you and who doesn't like you and why. And you need to know who connects with you and loves you for who you are and why. And that's a healthier way to operate in the world. And yeah, it's a little more dangerous one too. It's a little bit more vulnerable, but I think it's the way it should be.
Amen. Amen. And I don't know that it's as easy when you're younger and trying to create like that
Right.
tribe, right? But I'm
Right.
so proud of so many of the younger people out there. And I think it's the positives of social media when you can see somebody else out there who looks like you, whether it's on social media or on a TV show or in a movie, then somehow it makes you feel more comfortable being your most authentic self. But
Right.
when we were younger, you didn't have that necessarily. Now there's a lot more of that. So I think the younger generation has it a little bit easier and maybe better than we did. But thank God that there are people who are coming together and accepting each other's quirks and differences and differently wired brains. And there are more places where people can be comfortable being their authentic selves, whether it's online or in meetup groups or special conferences or whatever. I think that's so important. The other thing I want to say is somebody, because you guys are both in committed relationships, you, Greg, the longest, and I was for 32 years. For me, I now realize there are things that I'm just not compatible with. And and people always ask me, why do you always end up with somebody who's autistic or ADHD? Because I've learned so much, and I really do feel like I'm so accepting of myself that I'm really accepting of the partners that I've had in ways that I never was in my marriage. So that's a beautiful thing for those of you that are looking at your partner and wondering what to do next. If you can't be accepting of both your own unique differences and theirs, then that's information and data for you to kind of sift through and say, is this the right relationship for me? Right?
Or
Because,
is this the only relationship for me? Because
yeah.
you
Oh,
might
that's
get
a
something
good
from
one.
that person, and they may not be able to cover everything you need in a way that is reasonable to expect. You can talk to
100%.
other people. If
Right.
your partner just does not have it in them to sit and listen to you talk about what the ladies at work said every single day,
Right.
you might make another friend to offload that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess if you can accept though the quirkiness and you can accept that other people are going to look at your partner differently than maybe other partners you've had who haven't been neurodivergent or maybe haven't been neurodivergent in the way your current partner is, then I think you really need to look in the mirror. Because if your partner is comfortable being themselves, you have to look in the mirror and see if nothing changes. And this was a question I kept asking myself. If nothing changes about your partner,
Mm.
are you going to be okay? Because you only can change yourself, right? You
Right.
can ask for things from your partner, but you can't change your partner. And many of us have tried and failed.
Right.
I'd like to insert a caution. In
Please
the
do.
event that you have a neurodivergent partner who is very, very willing to change, who has had such experiences in the past, that's like, listen, I'll be anything you want me to be. You,
Mhm.
as long as you're clear about it, I will be anybody you want as long as I have the security and safety. If you have a person like that, don't exploit that. Don't encourage that. Tell them you love them as they are if you do, and help them be more of who they are. Just because they're willing to do anything for you, don't take advantage of that.
I agree 100%. And I think that that happened in my marriage. I think my ex did not speak up about the things that I asked him to change, and he would maybe do his best to change them. And I'm sure he was twisting inside, trying to be all those things that I thought he should be based on what I thought was the neurotypical playbook, right? And oh my gosh, can that cause physical health issues and mental health issues? So I 100% agree with you, Scott.
I heard a great description of it this week. That it's like playing a game of Tetris that you're about to lose
Mhm.
all the time. That
Mm,
everything is just there's one more block going to come down, and you don't know
mm.
where it's going to go, but you know it's all going to end if you don't. All the time, trying to keep
That's
up with. So yeah, I agree. The life of exploring who each of you are and how you can support each other in meeting your needs and coughing and all that. That's all good. It's not about how much can you change somebody else to be your ideal. That
right,
goes for anybody.
right. I agree 100%. Yeah, Greg, do you have any last words before we wrap up?
Um, yeah, I mean, the privilege that I feel from my wife, who loves me for who I am. She loves me. Every once in a while, I'll say that to myself. She loves me. Like it's an incredible. Like it's miraculous. You know, is such a privilege. Is such a gift. You know, and it's a gift you can give your partner back. Is
Mhm.
all I'll say.
That's beautiful. And for those folks that do listen to the Neurodiverse Love podcast, I'm not sure when this YouTube um, episode will come out, but I had the honor and the pleasure of interviewing Greg and his wife for the Neurodiverse Love podcast. So if you haven't heard that episode, when you see this, I encourage you to listen to it because it was really beautiful. And I had asked Greg for years if his wife would join me, and then finally she said yes. And the two of them were just so vulnerable and honest. So thank you, Greg and Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, it was excellent conversation. So this has been a great discussion, you guys, and I feel like this can be helpful to a lot of folks. Scott, did you have any last words?
Yeah, I want to refer people to a song by Mr. Fred Rogers called "It's You I Like."
Oh,
Do you remember that song? It's you I
Yeah.
is
like,
that?
every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new.
Oh, no,
You
I
I
don't.
like. It's not the way you do your hair. It's not the way. It's not the clothes you wear. It's not your toys. It's you. Every part of you. What's inside you, whether you've discovered it yet or not. Mr. Rogers, America's
Yeah.
great export. Yeah, be kind to each other.
Amen. Amen. And to yourself, right?
And to yourself. Have
Yeah.
compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
As you're
everybody's been through some hard stuff. Everybody's
Yeah.
been through some hard stuff. We're all just trying so hard. Be gentle with each other.
Yeah, I'm looking at my wall of positive affirmations, and I have one that says, "Be kind, for everyone is facing a hard battle." So that's how we'll end. And thank you all for listening to our YouTube channel, and follow us, subscribe, and share with others, because we have lots of great information and messages that we want to share with the world. So thank you guys.
Yeah, and send us your comments, your questions, your issues, your thoughts, and we might address them on air too. So thanks so much for listening.
And if we did anything that was embarrassing on your behalf, send us a note. It's on point. Right. It's on theme.